off of me. I can't use it anymore. It's getting dark, too dark to see. Feel like I'm knocking on heaven's door. This is the Community Solutions Podcast. Jason Bradley, Andrew Richter. And for the first day of baseball, I thought I'd throw you a softball.
I do know that one.
Yeah?
I'm pretty certain I do.
Okay.
I just saw something. Oh, no, it's not them. It's not the band with Nikki Sixx in them. No, it's the other one. I'm being facetious with you here.
Right.
That's my good friend Axl Rose of Guns N' Roses.
Well, they did a version of it. Yes, that is arguably, I guess, one of the more.
Oh, that's not who it is.
Well, yes, they did a version of it. So it's actually a Bob Dylan song.
It is.
Yes.
So we go knock 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 at a star. That's how it would actually sing if he sang.
Kinda, yeah. That's kind of
that. I didn't know. But I'm gonna give myself half credit for that.
No, you get credit for that.
I get credit for that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Either way,
it's kind of like how many people have done the, you can think of like a song. There was an Elvis song that's in my head that a bunch of people did. Willie Nelson did it. You Were Always on My Mind.
Oh, yeah.
It seems like 50 people have done. I mean, the Elvis version and the Willie Nelson version are the two most famous, but I know like 50 other people have tried to do that.
Yeah.
I just saw Elvis the other day. He's still alive.
Really?
So yeah.
Really?
Yeah, he shot Kennedy. Didn't you know that?
No, I did not know that.
I'm just kidding.
Word.
I'm 95% sure he's dead.
Yeah.
But I'm leaving a little bit of open so I can say I told you so if he just walks in the building.
You would never know. He's probably hanging out in Las Vegas. Nobody would know.
Where would Elvis hide? If Elvis was alive, where would he hide?
Where all the Elvis impersonators in the world are, in Las Vegas.
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
He could make a lot of money playing himself.
That's true.
People are like, God, you're so much like him.
Really good. You're the best I think I've seen, except for that guy over at the Bellagio.
Yeah,
he's got a couple of things that you don't.
That's right. He's just not quite as good as Elvis as you. Yeah, I can see that. Well, I'll tell you what, Jay.
Yeah.
Not to bring up national stuff, but I got to say one thing first. So,
yes,
I know it's got to be tough to be CNN or to be MSNBC right now and have the Mueller report come out.
Yeah,
and, have nothing happen. Something has to be done about these special counsels. I mean, there's people in this that like Roger Stone and people like that who've I'm forgetting everybody's name now that I'm on the spot here.
Right.
General Flynn and Paul Manafort, who've lost a lot of money defending themselves. That an investigation just could go on and bankrupt someone, and I'll tell you what, if I were President Trump, I know the rules are different for people who are famous.
Yeah.
But the word treason is thrown around, kind of like we mentioned how the word Nazi or the word racist is thrown around with no context and no meaning.
Right.
The word treason is the same thing. Okay? Mm-hmm. And if I were the president, just to test the law, I'd sue Adam Schiff for libel.
Yeah.
And I'd sue John Brennan along with it. Because it is one thing to disagree with somebody's politics. It's one thing to hate them. Okay?
Yeah.
I mean, I've certainly been accused of that a million times. I dispute that, but whatever. It's another thing to do what the chair of the Intelligence Committee in the House and what a former CIA director can go out and say, and there's no consequences to what they say. There's none.
Right.
And that's just unacceptable to me. And not only should that Adam Schiff piece of garbage resign, but there should be a call. Democrats are losing credibility every single day.
That's okay.
It is okay, but it's not good for the country. I mean, and no consequences to this are just going to breed more of this behavior. And, to me, I mean, I'm amazed at how literally no one misses a beat.
Yeah.
They're all just back on they're back on a new talking point. That memo went around Friday night, and you could tell. I mean, when a report in Washington gets released at 5 p.m. on a Friday, in the middle of North Carolina playing somebody or something like that, there's nothing to it.
Right.
Okay, so it's like the Patriot Act getting passed at 4 a.m. with no debate.
Yes.
the equivalent of that. And I'm just, we all should be happy. I never thought there was anything to this in the first place, but the idea that people are pissed off. Oh, we couldn't nail him.
Yeah.
It's like, what kind of person is that?
Yeah. Wishing for other people's demise, and rather than hoping that we could all do well together. Yeah, I feel the same way, and I find it a bit disturbing, and makes me sad that at least we can't wish that we could all do well together if our person isn't leading the ship.
Yeah, I don't know. It just angers me. I mean, you try not to. I try not to watch a lot of that stuff because there's just it's so poisonous. But I do have my favorites that I turn on once in a while, and I do have podcasts that I once in a while listen to, other than myself, of course, other than us. But it's pretty. I don't know. I mean, if I were hosting, if I were a host on Meet the Depressed or CNN, I'd never have these people on again. It's like, you just made us look like complete fools. Of course, they helped.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. All of them are all so in the bag or in the tank for. Well, yeah, I mean, CNN might as well be a DNC super PAC, but they don't even pretend to report news. But I mean, it just. I don't like. I think it's a sad day when people are celebrating that, when people can't just say, you know what, there was no collusion, we're going to move, and there never was. I mean, come on, what do you think the Russians did? Right?
Really? You really think they went in there and changed votes? Let's say, I mean, Bill Clinton took money from the communist Chinese and no Democrat raised an eyebrow.
Yeah.
I mean, Obama did they change votes?
Saying, after the election, tell Vlad I'm going to have a lot more flexibility. Really?
Yeah. But I don't know. I mean, people meet with leaders. Trump probably has, global business interests somewhere. I don't know is that evidence of. No. John Kerry, they sell Heinz ketchup over in Russia, don't they? Does that affect his wife? Were you married into wealth?
I mean, there is a difference now. I heard about something coming out. There's a book coming out soon about Joe Biden and how when he was vice president, at the same time he would go to some of these different countries, his son would come with him, and Bo, and it was all of a sudden for his little firm that he had, he was getting all of these multi-million-dollar deals directly with these contracts, directly with governments, the same governments that Joe was going to visit. At the same time he was going to visit them.
Well, we'll see if Adam Schiff investigates that. I doubt
Probably not.
Yeah, I'm sure he won't. But they might have. Biden probably talked their head off. Yeah. They probably just looked at the interpreter and like, hey, just whatever this guy wants, let's just get him out of here.
Right.
Okay. It could have been that too. So as Joe ponders his big decision, we're all waiting for it.
Right. Well. I think my favorite moment from the last week, though, did you get to see Mike Lee's presentation on the Green New Deal?
I heard about it, but I didn't see it.
Oh, my goodness, was that good.
I just love how the Green New Deal, nobody voted for it.
Yeah.
We're all going to die in 12 years, but nobody voted for it.
Here's the thing. AOC instructed all of the Democrats that were for it, don't vote for it, just vote present. Isn't this something you want?
Wow.
This is your signature legislation.
Yeah, but do they want it? I don't know. I think they want to keep their base angry. I think they want to. Democrats have had opportunity to, go back to cap and trade, which they couldn't pass when they had huge majorities in both houses.
Yeah.
They could have passed it if they wanted. They had 60 votes in the Senate.
Right.
Now, granted, I know parts of it got kind of pushed anyway by President Obama and executive orders, but you look at that, they could have raised taxes on anybody they wanted to. They could have, a lot of things die in the Senate because of cloture. But the truth is, if they really wanted something, and I'm telling you, there's still enough wishy-washy. The president would veto it, obviously, but there's still enough wishy-washy Republicans to probably vote for handfuls of this stuff, or at least bring it down to a state level or something like that. But I mean, again, they don't want to debate stuff.
Right.
You know, they don't want to negotiate. I mean, that's not what's going on here. It's just all in bad faith, and they know it.
No, but I mean, it was hilarious. So that was my favorite part of the week is Mike Lee coming along, and he had
Mike
this
Lee,
big,
one of the good guys.
He had this big poster board that had Ronald Reagan riding a velociraptor with an American flag, and then it had Aquaman on his big seahorse, and said that this is how we're going to all have to get to Hawaii after this passes.
Well, yeah, I don't know how you can ban air travel. I don't know.
Well,
what are you going to do? Confiscate every plane?
Well, government runs the air travel.
They do to a point. Yeah.
If you don't have
the FAA is very powerful.
Yeah. So
maybe that's where an executive order could come in handy.
Yeah.
One that increases freedom, not decreases.
Right.
The problem with executive orders, though, Jay, even though President Trump has done his fair share, many just reversing President Obama's stuff. The way to fix that, though, is to have Congress pass a law. If Trump reissues it or rescinds it, the precedent is still there that the next person who comes along can rescind his.
Yeah.
And we just get in this back and forth thing, and
that's why really they should just be used to run the executive branch.
Right. There's a place for executive orders.
Yeah.
But it's not, you can't spend money, you can't make policy. There's supposed to be limits to that, and of course, as with everything in government, there are no limits. Speaking of that, what's going on in the legislature that weekend? That is going to maybe even lead into what we're talking about today.
Well,
do we want to talk about the? I know the bonding bill.
You mean the Republican-led Minnesota Senate?
Yeah. Well, I know we're going to break down the bonding bill pretty soon here.
Yeah, we will.
But all the pork isn't public from that 1.3 billion that the governor has proposed. And of course, I'm sure the Republicans will propose like 1.26. So they're conservative on it. But what's going on here that we ought to know about here?
Well, I'm getting this off of Alpha News here. In fact, the article just came out today. This is an event that happened yesterday with our Republican-led Minnesota Senate. We could be super proud. They once again have stood as a bastion of freedom and good moral judgment. They passed a bill yesterday, HF 50, and by yesterday I mean the 27th of March. We're recording this the day after. HF 50, it bans cell phone use in vehicles without a hands-free device. Bill already has passed the House overwhelmingly. I don't know when the governor is getting it. The thing that's interesting about this one, and I suppose they're going to have some reconciliation because the House bill didn't have this. There was an amendment authored by Bobby Joe Champion, Minneapolis DFL, that added language that provided an additional exception to using a phone while driving a vehicle. According to the amendment, the use of a scarf or hijab or other items of clothing to hold a device in a hands-free manner is allowed under the new law. Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and by the way, it passed 106 to 21.
Yeah.
I mean, the usual people, Calvin Barr, Steve Jaskowski, some of our favorites here voted against it. But, for the most part, it was passed by a large majority. There's also a couple of budget bills. We'll get back to that in a second. Where once again the Republicans are going to propose to spend, it's like Dayton. They're going to give the governor 98% of what he wants, and then we'll negotiate that little 2%, which the Democrats will call a cut.
Right,
and that's
But here's what I don't understand. I don't want to quite move on from the votes yet on this. So there are those that voted against the amendment, but then voted for the entire bill with the amendment once the amendment passed. So you didn't like the amendment so much that you voted for the bill with the amendment in it.
Huh. I can't explain what goes on in St. Paul. It's just a cesspool.
Yeah, I don't know.
But let me ask you something. First off, distracted driving, quote unquote, takes on many forms. I think it's easy to pick on cell phones as the cause. But I remember one time, we're going to share a lot of stories tonight here because it's going to be one of those kind of episodes. I nearly ran into like a tree because I was driving up to my cabin and I was losing the Twins game. Yeah. And I was trying to tune a different station. I couldn't remember. It happened to be an FM station once I got up to the Aiken area. That's why I forgot. 94.3, by the way. To change to the game. And I nearly ran off 169. But it had nothing to do with two hands on the wheel like we're both 12 years old. I mean, people eat in the car. People chat in the car with somebody sitting next to them.
Yeah, what's the difference between having a conversation with somebody in your front seat and
I guess hands-free is the only thing. You could smack them and still drive, right? You could punch them in the nose.
Who do you talk to, though, and not look at when you talk to them? That's just weird.
I've got my people who I don't like to look at period.
People, like that, but that's a general rule.
Yeah,
especially if they're in your car.
I pick my nose a lot when I'm in the car too. Is it just so I'm knuckle deep sometimes. So I mean,
oh goodness.
But I mean, if we're gonna use anything as the accidents happen, and they happen for a whole host of reasons, and I think talking on the cell phone while driving is probably one of them, but it's probably one of about 500.
Right.
And what are you going to do? Selectively ban 10 of them and leave the other 490? I've seen people put shirts on while they're driving. I've seen people, screwing with the seatbelt or how many miles I got? When's my next oil change? They're looking at the thing up in the corner, that they put on. I mean,
but heck, I'm going to go a step further. Even the way the streets are laid out sometimes, you can become distracted by certain things that you're not paying attention to other things. Like people who want to stop when there's a yield and you're looking back to check your blind spot to see if you can merge, and that person decided to stay stopped.
Yeah.
You've taken your attention off of that person. Driving anywhere in Minneapolis, because you might be driving next to a bike lane, and then you might turn the corner and you might have parking and then a bike lane next to the parking, and then you're driving next to the bike lane. Then you might turn the corner again and you might have the bike lane next to the curb and then the parking out from the curb.
All right, I'm confused already.
Yeah, exactly. What do you look at? And you might miss a sign that says no turn on red. You might miss
a person biking in the sky or something.
Well, it's crazy town over there. So you want to talk about distracted driving? How about you keep your streets consistent? I don't know.
Yeah, consistently bad.
Well, they are consistently
in Minneapolis. Bad. Yeah, it's consistently bad. So.
Yeah.
I don't know. Again, but there is an like you said, the exception. I think there'll be a run on scarves and hijabs. There'll be a run on those. Don't you think?
Yeah.
I mean, just so somebody can stick the phone in there.
I know a good mall run by Smalley's off of 24th and Elliott where you could get all the hijabs you want.
Oh, really? Okay.
So I'll put a plug in.
Might be a run
there.
on those.
Yeah.
Maybe people can put a blindfold on and hold the phone. No, I'm kidding. There's your state government, folks. I mean, well, what are you going to do? I mean, they're certainly not going to solve any problems, so they might as well pass stupid crap.
Yep. I don't know. You'd look kind of funny with a hijab.
I think I look funny with anything, so it's, I might as well be consistent.
Yeah. Oh, boy. Yeah, that's the kind of show I think we're in for today, unfortunately, for all of you. But I think it's going to be fun. We led off with, of course, knocking on heaven's door. We're not talking so much about that as Mama put my badge in the ground, right? We're talking about public safety, but from a sense of, how really they're supposed to be servants. How do you serve, in public safety, and how not to serve in public safety?
Well, I think that relationship between police force and a community is always so important. And it's kind of like, maybe being in a marriage or a relationship. Once you lose the trust, it's hard to get that back.
Yeah.
It's kind of like having a bad reputation or a reputation as a dishonest person or as whatever. Boy, is it difficult to change that. I mean, it just really is. I mean, some people like Gary Hart can change their reputation over 30 years. And, if you're old enough to remember him.
Oh, yeah.
But, and not you, I mean the audience. I know you are. But, you can, reputations can change. But I'll tell you, the reputation of a police force, and we're going to share some stories because I've got some good ones, and I've got. First, let me say this: I am neither. No matter what, and Jay, I know you're the same way. Mm-hmm. I am not a police basher, and I'm not a police apologist.
Right.
I think way too many people sit on one side or the other for whatever reason, and chances are it's because of what they've heard, not because of what they've experienced. And so, if you're somebody who grew up with I always the thing that always brings me is the whole Rodney King thing. Mm-hmm. I remember back in I don't remember what year that was, but 91, 92, 93. Like that, I remember the riots and the some guy sitting recording. Of course, today everything would get recorded.
Oh yeah.
That was very rare to see something like that. Right. I think it made it maybe a national issue where before that maybe it wasn't.
Yeah, that was back in 92.
92, okay, and I remember that it was like a 2-week thing, if I remember right, out there. So there's so there's that, and I just, it concerns me, Jay, that it's just another one of those hot button issues where having a conversation has been compromised.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I'll go on to social media and some incident will happen. Pick your incident. It doesn't matter. And immediately there's half the people defending the police, half the people calling the police all sorts of horrible things. And nobody saying, okay, well, wait a sec here. What really happened and what was the, impetus behind the actions? And the police are often told by attorneys or their union that they can't talk, and one side is doing all the talking. And so, I mean, what is that? What is, first, I mean, our personal experiences, mine has been mixed with police, depending on the city, depending on, I take it with a grain of salt because I don't like to take one officer or something and bash an entire department. Mm-hmm. Trust me, over the years, I could have used our blog anytime to do that, and chose not to for a whole host of reasons, but that's one. That I'm just not going to go on and just bash somebody singly. I just won't do it.
Yeah.
So what is behind the relationship between the police and a city? I mean, who is, I guess the question I'm getting at is who's responsible for that? I mean, obviously it's both sides, but how does it get so bad in some places? What is it with police that has become, I got some theories, but I
Yeah.
mean, what is it how it's become such a lightning rod issue?
Well, I think that there's a number of issues. I don't think you can nail it down to any one thing. I think that there are a lot of different things. I mean, the perception is, say, of Chicago. What do you say? What do you think of when I say Chicago Police Force?
Well, I go all the way back to the Democratic Convention in 1968.
Yeah.
Well, I think of a corrupt city government, first and foremost.
Yeah.
I think of a lot of division among the city, and you can name your incident.
Yeah. I mean, you just Google, Chicago police corruption, and you're going to get article after article after article, and it's WGN, it's NBC, it's not crazy conspiracy sites.
Yeah, it's not the Reverend Jackson's blog or something.
Well,
trying
right.
to fan the flames of something.
Right.
It's legitimate. Well, some legitimate anyway.
Yeah.
Questions, and Chicago's always been a city like that. It seems like they just can't clean themselves up.
Right. So, I mean, you've got that. You do have instances of, I'm just going to say it, racist police officers, and it's
happened,
exacerbated.
Sure. Bull Connor. I mean, come on.
It's going to be exacerbated in areas where there are a lot of minorities, and there's or in areas where there's a lot of crime, that can be exacerbated as well. I know Minneapolis has or had a couple. I just, I had heard stories from one of the police officers there, so it was a credible source. So you have things like that. You have, I think, cities that drive it, like Chicago, obviously, if that comes from the police chief down or the mayor down or however, but it also can be in small podunk little places where it's like, now you head out, and when somebody comes by real fast, you write them a ticket.
Yeah,
it can be that kind of thing.
It's the I'm driving through Hazard County, and Roscoe P. Coltrane's putting up a baby bird sanctuary and nailing anybody for driving through it. And Cletus or Enos is putting up a toll road. I mean, you laugh at that, I realize that that's a funny TV show, but the best humor has an element of the truth in it.
It came from somewhere.
That. Yeah.
So I would
drive through.
say,
hold on. Drive through some. I won't name any towns because I can't think of them offhand. But you're on a 2-lane highway.
Yeah.
In Minnesota, especially northern or western Minnesota.
Yeah.
You're going to drive through a town of 500 people that's got Sheriff Ed Little sitting there, clocking you with a hairdryer.
Yeah.
And if you go through his town at 31 instead of 30, the object is to go get you. It's not to serve the public.
Right.
It's, okay, how many people can I catch today? And I think that breeds a lot of distrust. Let me give you something else. Here's one thing I hate. And I have told police officers, none of your business to the answer to this.
Yeah.
You get pulled over. Nobody tells you why you're being pulled over. And they're asking you, where are you going? Where have you? And I'm saying, it's none of your business.
Yeah.
Why do you need to know that? It's public street. I own this car. Hell, I own the roads, and I pay your salary. There's no reason I have to tell you that. And I would encourage people to say that. I've said this many, and I get a different reaction every time.
Yeah.
But I have said, it's none of your business where I came from. It's none of your business where I'm going.
Yeah.
Period.
It's true.
But I think that trying to get more information is one thing that really breeds distrust with me. And I can tell you, let me share my first story. Not the most flattering story about me, but I'll tell it anyway, because this was the first time I ever got a ticket for anything. I was about maybe 23-ish. I was living in Robbinsdale, driving to my dad's.
Yeah.
I can't remember what for, but I had gotten my tabs the day before, and I had a softball game the previous night, and I hadn't put the tabs on my car. I don't know why. I had to wait long at the DMV, or I don't remember why, but I just threw them, and it was past the 1st, but before the 10th.
Yeah.
You know, when you have to have them on. And I was driving, if you go from downtown Robbinsdale through Crystal by Steve-O's there, whatever road that is, West Broadway, right when you get into Crystal, there was like a little area where the Robbinsdale cops used to sit. They probably still do.
Yeah.
Jerks probably still sit there. And I'm drive by, and I was not speeding. Boom, immediately I see the gumballs come on.
Yeah.
Okay. I pull over, and this guy asked me question after question. This is at like it was at like 2 in the afternoon.
Yeah.
Okay. And the whole time he's looking in my back seat. I asked him why I was pulled over like 3 times. Wouldn't give me an answer. Finally, he said, well, Mr. Richter, I pulled you over because your tabs are expired. And I said, but how could you see that from when I drove? I mean, drive sometime and see if you can see the month or something. I know every year is a different color, but this is the middle of the summer. Said, you know, how did you see that? And he looked in my back seat, and he's like, what's that there in your back seat? And I'm like, the only thing I remember is having my softball stuff back there. I think I had a bat at the time, had my cleats, my batting glove, my glove. Well, I get out, he opens the door, and inside my glove is a half-drank bottle of peach schnapps.
Oh.
Okay, I used to drink before the games to calm myself down a little bit, and I must have thrown it in the back. And believe me, it was warm as piss that day. I mean, I wasn't drinking of it. I'm like, look at this bottle. Give me a breathalyzer. I haven't had anything.
Yeah.
You know, I should have thrown it in the trunk, sure, but, you know, it was like under my glove. I mean, and so we harangued a little bit about that, and he ends up writing me a ticket for an open bottle.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to say what I said, okay, but I damn near went down to City Hall.
Yeah.
And, you know, today I might have, but I mean, I was just, I mean, it was the kind of thing, and I lived in Robbinsdale for 3 years, and the police would, you know, I used to go to the Eagle's Nest, and the old bar used to be called Breakaway, and then it became the Lodge and all that, and I mean, there were little spots where they'd hang out and, you know, watch people leave and things, and it was just like, man, you know, it feels like the police are my enemy here.
Yeah.
And what is this? I mean, again, not the most flattering story, but to this day, I believe that police, I believe he lied to me. Mm-hmm. I believe he never saw my tabs. I don't know why he pulled me. To this day, I don't know why he pulled me. I have no idea. And it was just, as far as I'm concerned, Robbinsdale can take that ticket, and you know where they can take that ticket. Of course, I paid it, being the great citizen that I am.
Yeah.
But boy, I'll tell you what, you wanted something to get you off on the wrong foot with a city, that was a great way to do that.
Wow.
So not too good there, Robbinsdale.
Mm.
Now, granted, I mean, that was... What year was I 23? 2000? I mean, that was a long time ago, but I got pretty upset about that one. So there's a good way. But, I mean, again, the whole, you know, what are you doing? Where are you going? And I think I have a right to know why I'm being stopped. And you know, it's to not say something is, you know, dirty tactics. But I think their tactics are part of it.
Yeah, that can be part of it as well. You know, sometimes it's just wanting to have some power or whatever. I remember I was, how old was I? I was probably 14, 13, I don't know, getting into my first band, you know. Maybe I was 15. Anyways, so getting into my first band ever, and I was the drummer. I was, you know, not a very good one, but we were going to take band photos, and most of the time at that age, you know, we kind of knew how to play, but, you know, we spent our fair share of time, like, lip syncing to CDs and stuff like that. I think CDs.
Putting on the hits?
Or was it cassettes? It might have been cassettes at that time. I don't know. Anyways, But we would kind of go back and forth between both. But it was time to take some photos because every good band has got to have some photos. And so we were in.
Were you in your Kiss makeup or something?
No. You know, just what it would have been late '80s, early '90s. So had longer hair and all that kind of stuff. And you know, we all took our instruments and we walked up the road. We were in technically, I don't think it's really Hermantown. I think it was more Midway Township. Walked up the road, maybe a half mile. There was this rickety old wood bridge. It's metal now. You know, they redid the whole bridge. I don't know where they got the money for that, but
bonding bill.
That bridge was bad news. I used to with my old '84 Ford Tempo, my first car. I won't say what I did, but let's just say I was watching the Dukes of Hazzard a lot when I grew up. And it was at the top of a hill. There was a hill on both sides of it, and then this rickety old wood bridge. Anyways, so we walked down the hill kind of under this bridge, and we were going to take our photos. There's the Proctor Railroad goes along that stretch of land, and we were just going to take pictures. No big deal. This guy comes up, and he's like, "You guys are trespassing. You guys got to get out of here right
under
now."
Under a bridge?
Yeah, under a bridge. Because technically, I guess it's railroad land or something like that. But we're a bunch of kids taking photographs, and
You want to talk about trespassing? Go to California, see all the people sleeping underneath bridges.
I have always said this: if I was homeless, I'm going to go sleep on a beach in L.A. or San Diego.
Just a warmer place to be homeless.
None of you all out there in our listening audience can steal my idea. I'm just saying that right now. I call the palm tree that is out on Venice Beach right now. All right, but yeah, so he was busting our chops about trespassing, and do we have to take you, and talk to your parents and blah 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 blah, whatever. But so you get things like that, but I think there is another dynamic to this as well. I mean, it's not. Again, we're not police apologists, but we're not police bashers. They also unfairly, I think, get characterized certain ways because they do live and work in a very dangerous environment. And you have now, with the advent of all of these groups, whether it's Black Lives Matter, whether it is Occupy Wall Street, whether it is there's a whole slew
against
of them
police
now.
brutality.
You've got all these that are looking to either set the police up, or they live a violent lifestyle. They don't have respect for authority. Mm-hmm. Anytime that you have any kind of drugs involved or things like that, they don't know what they're walking into. You never know if that car that pulls you over is going to pull out a .22. Right.
There is that. And I mean, there is an element of danger that I think is hard to wrap your arms around. And I think it's real. I think cops are real easy sometimes. They have to enforce laws, and they don't just enforce the laws they like. That's not what their duty is.
Right.
They take orders too.
Right.
So the idea that you're upset they caught you doing something, well, you were the one breaking the law.
Right. Well, I think
there's nuances to that.
Right.
But that's the whole point. That whatever side you're on, I mean, what is that based on? Is it because your dad was a cop? Is it because somebody that got arrested? Is it because you saw something on TV? What is the reason behind what your feelings are there?
Right.
And I've seen a lot of cops do great things. Mm-hmm. Solve crimes, and I'll tell another story that doesn't put me in a very flattering light, but it's really funny.
Yeah.
One of the first instances, maybe the second, that I had with the Crystal Police. I went to Big Louie's that night and decided I couldn't drive home.
Yeah.
Okay. I was too cheap. This is before Uber, before, this is probably 2006, 7, 8-ish.
Yeah.
So I wasn't a known figure at that point either. Okay. So like today I would never drive just because, there's a lot of people who would love to see me get in trouble. But I, and you shouldn't anyway, but I don't remember. I ran into somebody I knew or whatever, and I was like the third to the last one to leave. It's a little longer of a walk than I realized. Yeah. And when you're not in your fullest faculties, sometimes you need to sit down and take a break. Well, I got in front of like McDonald's there on West Broadway.
Yeah.
Sat down, and then I jumped up on the little side there, and I like leaped off of it or something like that.
Yeah.
I think I did it again, and like again in front of Perkins or something. And a cop pulled up by me and asked me what I was doing. I said, "Well, I had a fun night, and I'm walking home." And he looks at he kind of was giggling, and he looks at my license. He said, "Okay, so you just live over here? That's just over there." And he pointed toward Becker Park, and he just lived like, "Yeah, that's it." He goes, "All right, well, hop in. I'll make sure you get home okay."
Yeah.
So he gave me a lift home. But, I mean, he was cool about it. He technically could have probably, I don't know, his public, intoxication. Maybe he could have brought me in for some. I wasn't doing anything.
Right.
But technically, and actually I was going to cut through the park, which you're not supposed to do either at 1:30 in the morning. But, I mean, I was just like, hey, Crystal's all right. I mean, the guy could have been a jerk. And he wasn't. And but it's a good thing. He could have been. I could have been a jerk too.
Yeah.
I chose not to be. So
right.
Maybe it goes both ways a little bit. Again, do these two stories put me in very good light out here for the audience?
Once again,
when you're young,
Well, and I think the Crystal Police have been pretty good. I mean, I remember when Black Lives Matter came through, and CUAPB and they were super professional. They were holding the doors open for people, allowing them into the city hall and all that kind of stuff. And they were super professional. I also remember, again, this is me having a band. I have a history of being really loud, being a bad neighbor, I guess. But we were having band practice, and the people that lived around us loved to listen to the band. I mean, we're pretty good, if I do say so myself. Well, that's what we were told, so I'll just go with that. But, people didn't complain, although there was a guy 2 doors down that he didn't like anybody, didn't like anything, bit of a racist, ended up moving out to Greater Minnesota so that his granddaughter, I guess we'll say, didn't have to mix with other people, is what I hear. Anyways, he would sit and watch, and then he would call the cops eventually when we were doing, and we kept practice pretty short. It was a couple hours or whatever, and we did a couple times a week.
Now, you're doing this at like 5 in the afternoon, or
or maybe
7?
like 6 to 8 or something, or maybe 7 to 9, at the very latest. We always tried to be done in a decent hour, and but he got to a point where he started calling the police on us, and the Crystal Police would show up and say, "I'm really sorry. You guys are super good, but..." Yeah, he called again. So sorry, we got to come out, and we can just maybe turn it down a little or something. Yeah, so, I mean, that's an example of them, I think, doing things the right way. Mm-hmm. And so you've got those two extremes. Unfortunately, you have bad eggs, I think, sometimes on either side that can make things worse than they need to be. And sometimes I think it's driven by a city council or by a police department. Like, personally, I don't see the need for having unmarked squad cars that sit and just try to catch speeders.
Yeah.
I remember, well, this wasn't unmarked, but it was earlier this week. I need to figure out how the law actually works on this. There was a New Hope police officer,
I'll get in New Hope. Yeah.
Well within the boundaries of Crystal, like when you're going out Bass Lake Road towards New Hope from Crystal, it would have been, trying to think, in the Wells Fargo parking lot facing towards New Hope, but you know that there's still probably 4 or 5 blocks.
I'm not sure. I know by where Pizza Hut used to be, that's New Hope.
Yeah.
But if you go down the street a little bit, it's Crystal. St.
Right.
Rayfield's is Crystal.
Yep, and this is before St. Rayfield's.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what it is there.
There's like a block or two before that.
What I remember was campaigning over there and having to look at the street signs because they're green if they're Crystal, they're blue if they're New Hope. Yes.
So I guess I don't know what the law is, but I don't understand why New Hope cops were within the boundaries of Crystal, trying to nab people. It just, to me, you've got plenty of New Hope to cover.
Yeah, no kidding.
Sit up the road another 5 blocks, and I don't know. So I've had plenty, I think, of positive experiences, and I think for me, I won't say that I've ever been pulled over, but in the event that I had.
Well, Mr. Perfect Drive. I thought I was the world's greatest driver.
No, when I was younger, I have not had any kind of speeding ticket or anything like that in many, 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 many years. But
I've never gotten a speeding ticket, actually.
Yeah, now I always drive with cruise control on. Oh. Always, doesn't matter where I am. But my propensity is to goose that thing a little bit. So now I play it safe. But you take that insurance card out, and you take your driver's license out, turn on the light, you sit with your hands on top of the wheel, and you just polite, and it usually works out,
Sometimes.
Yeah. But I will say there are times when I think it's important, like you did, where are you going? I don't have to tell you.
Yeah.
I think
you need to stand up for your rights sometimes.
A perfect example. There was a number of stories going around. Oh, I'm trying to remember when it was, but where you had these checkpoints, these DWI checkpoints set up, and police were taking blood from people to test.
Well, they were just stopping everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is, again, you see it in these seatbelt campaigns, click it or ticket.
Those are the worst.
You see it in, if you go out of town for like Memorial Day or something, there's extra enforcement out. It's like, well, what?
Yeah.
So what? I'm driving home from my cabin. What? I'm the target? I'm assumed to be drunk off my ass? That's the assumption. How's that not profiling? That's what I want to know.
Right.
I mean, we talk about profiling, and everybody immediately thinks about race or something, or going after teenagers, which is also a form of profiling too. But to me, if I'm driving home on Memorial Day from a barbecue, that is not cause to pull me over.
Right.
That isn't. And local law enforcement does not have to participate in those things, and they choose to do it anyway.
Right.
So, that's out of bounds to me. Because you'll hear the people say, well, you don't want to break the law, don't do any. It's like, well, wait a minute. But if you're a target of something, they're basically announcing, we're coming after you if you're driving on this day.
Basically.
You go home from fireworks on July 4th, we're going to be there.
They're just flat out saying it.
Yeah, and it's like, what is that?
Yeah.
But that's where I come from, this confrontational, like serving the public or going after the public.
Yeah.
And I know there's a fine line, but it's where that line to me gets crossed. Let me share a couple. You brought up New Hope.
Yeah.
And of course we're known for not being fans of that city. And cards on the table here, I haven't had the best experiences with New Hope Police either. But like my wife, who works in New Hope's, had great experiences with them. But a lot of that's from her nursing. So and from what she tells me, they have been great. But I can tell you that there was a time that I worked in New Hope, worked very late at night, and several times I got pulled over, in my opinion, just because of what time it was and the fact that I was driving at 1 o'clock in the morning, which again is not. And again, they started the same way.
Right.
You know, where are you going? Where'd you come from? You know, but I'm like, why am I being pulled over? Now, one time, it happened 3 different times. One time I did have a broken tail light and didn't know it. It was my middle one, not one of the side ones, which makes me a little...
So one of those little license plate lights? Or
No, I had one, when you slam the trunk, there was one on the top of the trunk.
Oh.
And that allegedly... And it was out. But, you know, I think it's a lot different than not having one or the other, but just my opinion. But the other times, I mean, I never got an explanation as to why I was stopped. And I think they were just fishing for people who were drinking.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that's where it's like probable cause thing or the looking to bust somebody feeds into that mistrust. And so, and here's another issue. Can I bring up militarization of the police?
Yes,
because
that's a good one.
I know that is something that has concerned me for a long, long time. That there's this military identity here. What's going on with that? Where did that come from?
Well, I think some of it is, when we set up things like gang task force, or I think it's maybe an overflow of, like a SWAT team might need to have some of that stuff, but then it starts creeping out into the rest of the department. I know Sheriff Stanek, who we've talked about before, had bought like those Bradley fighting vehicles for the sheriff's office, especially back. It was when they were gonna have the Republican National Convention here. Remember that?
Yeah.
And there were all these threats about all these groups that were going to stir up trouble and all that, and yeah.
But I mean, don't we have a bomb squad? What do you need? I mean, it's just like when you see that and you see people with billing clubs and helmets. What? They look like they're looking for a fight.
Yeah, and I think it's one thing to show up, like if you're expecting a riot or there's a riot going on and you're trying to restore order, they have to do that.
Yeah, they have to.
They have to do that to keep people safe, to keep people's businesses intact.
Well, if you don't do anything, you're just inviting that to happen anyway.
Right. But to be there waiting, at a big event just because something might go wrong and to be dressed like that, to look like a stormtrooper or whatever, I don't think that's, necessarily right. But, maybe you keep all the gear in a truck off to the side or whatever, and people are just doing foot patrol, dressed in their normal uniforms. But yeah, when you have, I know I probably won't make any of our listeners upset, but when you have groups that are blocking entire freeways, I sat and watched one of those one time. They had put it on TV, and I think it was when they were blocking 94. And the cops nobody did anything. They just let them do it. And then
orders to
some
stand
guy
down.
came on the bullhorn, and it's like, you guys got to get moving. You guys got to go. You guys got 5 minutes to get off this freeway. Yeah, they didn't do anything. They had all these trucks there that they could have thrown people in and arrested people, and they just let them do it. So what are they going to do? They're going to block something else next time.
Yeah. Well, and again, there's that's selective law enforcement.
Yeah.
I mean...
Right. Well, I mean, and it's Minneapolis, so, I mean, if the orders are coming from the mayor, are you really that surprised?
No, I'm not, but the mayor can't pick and choose which laws get enforced and which laws don't.
Well...
But that's the problem. If he does that, then we're going to have the same issue a week later and 2 weeks after that. I mean, there was a bill in the legislature to make that a felony, and it failed. What does that tell you?
Right.
I mean, it tells you no one's interested in doing that. It depends on who the group is. We both know that it all depends on who's there.
Right.
If that were I won't pick your group. If it were pro-life protesters or something, they all would have been thrown in jail. But because it's whoever it was, I don't even remember who it was, Black Lives Matter, whoever, oh no, we've got to let them do whatever they want.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, but that's just the facts. I mean, it's one group gets things gets away with things and one group doesn't, and that's just, unfortunately, that's how unblind we enforce the law.
Right. Well, I mean, I don't know if you had heard about. Was it out in Seattle with? Or no, it was out in Portland, wasn't it, with Antifa?
I don't know.
And they pretty much just kind of handed the city over to Antifa. Antifa takes over Portland, harasses old man for disobeying. Antifa, Portland police protect white supremacy by passing intel to Patriot Prayer. There was a struggle for a long time. Blocking Portland traffic, nearly starting a riot. Democratic leaders of Portland allow Antifa to terrorize and threaten citizens with no police intervention. There's story after story about this, where you've got these groups and they have terrorized to the point where they're allowed to get away with this stuff. And I don't know if you remember, it was about the same time period, and I think Betsy Hodges was still the mayor of Minneapolis, where she was giving a press conference, and it pretty much just got taken over by one of these groups. Yeah. And eventually, I mean, they just left, and they still left the cameras rolling. They left the networks running, and the group took over the podium. They got to give their speeches.
Again, it's Betsy Hodges just being paralyzed of what to do. Don't want to offend anybody. Don't want to look this way or look that way. But I mean, so how do Jay? Let's just back up a sec. How do we do this then? How do we make it so it's not the get tough law and order? You're in my town and you're gonna do what I say, versus we're gonna let the inmates take over the asylum. Where is the middle ground there, and how do we get that everywhere? How do we make it so law enforcement are servants, but they're not letting it go to the other extreme?
Well, and that's the thing. It varies so much city by city. Minneapolis is going to be different than Forest Lake.
Yeah. Well, we talk about there's no cookie cutter approach.
Right. In Duluth, it's like, there's another fight outside the Thunderbird Hotel. We got to go put some people in detox. Versus, and that's very real. But, versus coming down here and, not knowing, there's just a lot of tension in the air in Minneapolis and St. Paul right now. And for the police to be able, and I would say even in bigger cities like Duluth and stuff, I mean, there's a little bit of this, knowing this because I've got somewhere in this state, I've got close family in law enforcement, that some of these bigger cities, I mean, they are seeing an influx of people from Chicago, and they are seeing an influx of people from Mexico that are bringing drugs and things like that. And that adds a whole different dynamic into the whole law enforcement / policing business, because once you introduce that, I mean, you have more things like theft and all that, but it also brings about more violent crime as well, and you don't know what you're walking into.
Yeah.
And so how do you do that? I mean, how do you not profile people but still kind of keep your head on a swivel?
Well, profiling, I mean, I don't know, to me that's a word that's profiling happens everywhere. Let's just be blunt about it. There's certain things on a checklist that people just have. Yeah. It's I don't know if people unconsciously do it or what, but great, you profile people you date. Mm-hmm. They got this, they don't got this. That's people do it all the time. And if you know that an area is riddled with crime, or police know where they get called all the time, it's what do you do with that information? Right. Is it profiling to drive by there a couple times a day?
Yeah. I don't know. I remember seeing recently that.
It sounds like I'm complaining about it and I'm endorsing it, but you see how hard this is. Yeah. It's like I'm driving home from the cabin is not a reason to pull me over. Well, a crime happened down the street from me this week. Is that a reason to drive up and down my block 10 times? I mean, what?
Yeah, I know. I remember seeing a video. There was a pastor of a church in North Minneapolis. I think it's Berean Baptist off of Lyndale and like 30th Avenue North, I think. I've driven by it a few times. And he was telling the legislature, it was more about like firearms and being able to carry and all that kind of stuff. But how there were people that in the middle of the day were getting shot even in his parking lot. And like I say, I've seen the building. I mean, basically you walk out the back door of the church and the parking lot is like kind of right across an alley or whatever. But they have had to escort people to their cars, like women. They want to escort them from the church to their car because of how dangerous it has become right in that area. And that there's just a number of like drug houses in that area, and that there are shootings all the time and this and that. And I don't know. I mean, when you're in that kind of a almost a war zone, but yet you have, I would say, most of the time you say 10% of the people are ruining the fun for everybody. You got 10% who are bad apples. But I would say in an area like that, it's probably a little more highly concentrated where you might have upwards of like 20% that are bad apples, with 80% of the people being probably really good people. Yeah. So what do you do when you don't know what's around the next corner? And I don't think that's something that you and I can solve here on this podcast. But I do believe that it is something that needs, I don't know, we need to put our resources, I think, where we know violent crime exists and where we know, and I don't want to talk about like, people smoking pot in their basement or whatever, but I mean, people who are dealing and moving significant amount of drugs, I mean, that really does affect the character of a community. And I think that's different when you're taking care of the pushers and the sellers and the dealers that way. I don't know. Yeah. There's this whole deal that it can very easily become very militarized and too forceful. And there's a whole other segment of it where you turn a blind eye to what's really going on. And I think sometimes we're turning a blind eye to some of the most violent aspects of it because of who does it. When you have an illegal alien who comes and kills somebody and then gets released because they don't want to turn them over to ICE.
Yeah.
But again, that's policy from the city. That's tying the police's hands. That is not, that's not the police deciding we're just not going to keep these people. I mean, that usually comes from City Hall.
True, and it's just another reason to watch who you're sending to City Hall. I mean, it just reinforces everything that we say over and over and over. But the whole point is somehow, and I think communication is big, but communication's a two-way street too.
Yeah.
You can't talk if nobody's listening.
Right.
So, but the relationship between the police and local community is just one of the most important. And I just want people to think out there why they think something about the police. And base it on your experience, not on what you see on TV. You see the worst of the worst. You rarely hear anything good.
Yeah.
And trust me, there's bad apples everywhere. There's more good guys than bad guys. But, and there has to be, I'll tell you this much too. The police are union protected, and maybe that's not good for getting rid of the bad apples.
Yeah, that's often true.
I mean, what do unions often do? Well, they often protect the jobs of the bad workers. I mean, it's sometimes what it ends up being. We talk about this with teachers and other things, and why isn't it the same with police? I mean, it's not easy to get fired.
No.
You got to screw up 20 times to get fired. And so there's that element too. You know, being a policeman's not a right.
No.
So, you know, there's part of that too. I don't think the answer is sensitivity training. I don't think the answer is bringing cultural specialists there. You know, I don't think that's the way to treat this. I think, you know, ultimately you have to be able to get rid of the bad apples, and without the interference of, well, you know, how can somebody run a department if, you know, they can't get rid of the people that they think are problems?
Right.
So,
and then on the other side of the, you know, we're taught now that we are guilty till proven innocent.
Yeah.
I mean, that is different than we have ever been in America. You know, we are suspected of having done something until it's proven that we haven't. And so I think that has eroded a lot of our liberties as well, because, you know,
ain't that the
reasonable, you know, doubt. Well, what's that? What's reasonable?
Well, where do you go to get your reputation back?
Yeah.
Nowhere.
Nowhere. Spend a lifetime building it up, and it can be gone in moments.
Especially today.
Yeah.
Gone forever.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, and the reputation of police officers, too. I mean, their reputations are on the line. Look, I know we're community solutions here, but I don't have the perfect answer to this. I think it just comes down, I think you have to err on the side of innocence. I think that, you know, just my advice to police officers, and take it with a grain of salt, I don't think I could do that job. I do have to throw out a compliment to, I think it was the Anoka police.
Yeah.
Because I was at a bar about 3 weeks ago, and quite frankly, they showed a lot more restraint than I would have. Because this guy would have been handcuffed and thrown in the back before anything, what this would have happened. But some guy comes into this place, I won't say the place, drunk out of, messed up on something with no shirt on. So, you know, they tried to throw him out. It's like, okay, you can't be in. The guy wouldn't leave. Ran around, went to go to the bathroom and missed. Let's put it that way. About 8 people got to see his blong wang. And all the police were finally called. Okay? So he's running around and then runs outside, lays down in the parking lot. And this whole thing took a while.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like, okay, he's had his fun. He claimed his shirt was stolen by someone who'd steal a shirt off somebody's back. I don't know who'd do that. But, you know, they let it go and let it go and let it go. And finally the guy got up and with rocks and stuff all over his, stuck on his back. And they tried to do like a snow angel on the cement or something. I don't know. And but I got to say, I mean, I admired their restraint.
Yeah.
But I'd have been ticked off if I owned the bar. It's like, hey, come on, get this guy out of my parking lot.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it was like half an hour they sat there. And I don't know what, I mean, technically, I don't know that he committed a crime. I don't know what that would be, but it was kind of like, boy, I got to say, they showed some. I was ready to go out there and throw the guy over a fence.
Oh, I know that feeling.
So it was like,
well, I remember a few years ago, I had gone to Broadway Pizza in Crystal, which no longer exists, and there's probably a good reason for that. But I remember going there after daughter's dance recital, and a fight broke out between two guys, and all of a sudden they came crashing into tables and overturning things right where we all were, and all the women and children went into the little party room and shut the door. And man, I wanted to just grab each of them by the ear and toss them out. I was upset. Like, how dare you do this when my family is eating here? It wasn't just mine. There were a few families that were there, you know, and I, from what I understand, they were released to just go home on their own recognizance, and nothing ever happened. Well, I don't know. That doesn't really
certainly
solve the problem.
weren't called as an eyewitness to something.
No, I was not, and I never went back to Broadway after that.
And it's a good lesson for establishments too. If you serve a lot of alcohol, people are getting drunk. maybe you had to have a little security there to protect your.
Yeah, nobody there was able to do anything. I mean, it was a bunch of women, and I think there might have been a guy tending the bar, but he didn't do anything.
Deer in headlights, maybe.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I don't know.
Huh. So the police came, and everybody went home with dinner.
Yeah. Yep. That was fantastic. I don't know.
Well, hopefully we gave you some funny stories about both of us. Jason's band days and my drinking and playing softball days, which aren't quite over, but I don't do that before the game anymore. I can relax now on my own.
That's good.
Yeah, so, but I mean, just some food for thought. I mean, and hopefully, I think bottom line is two things. I think there's things the police can do, and I think there's things we as citizens can do, particularly base your opinions not on some agitator, not on some guy with a bullhorn.
Yeah.
Not on some political campaign, but on your own experiences. And if you had good experiences, there's nothing wrong with sharing and saying so. There's nothing wrong with saying thank you to a cop that protected you or solved a crime or whatever you want to say. There are great people out there. And I do think that TV, though, has damaged the what people think of police. I mean, I think back to like the O.J. Simpson case where the police were clearly put on trial, which was terrible, I thought, and so on and so forth. And that relationship seems to just deteriorate more every day.
Yeah, I think when you're looking at reality, I think that's probably the case. I don't think that the news networks by any means want to make the police look good, especially when they're standing up for people, in some of these special interest groups like Antifa and whatever. I think when you get into some of the more...
Another abdication of the media. I mean, the media's job is not to cheerlead for something or.
No, but I think where you find maybe a more realistic view of some of these, or it would be, in some of the shows that are out there, because you've got oftentimes writers who sit down with police and they learn about their job from them, and novelists are, kind of the same way. They spend time digging into their subjects, and, like I would say, I don't watch a lot of TV, but I've watched a little bit of like Blue Bloods before, and like I think that shows an excellent, that's very level-headed, where they are trying to do the right thing. Sometimes the right thing isn't super apparent. You got to figure it out. Yeah. Sometimes you get caught in something in the moment, and I think that because of how these writers approach things, that they probably do a far better job than our media does in showing how police work really happens. Because sometimes they do show that there are dirty cops, but at the same time, there are those that love their job and do a very good job.
Interesting. I got to watch some of those shows. I don't. I'm not a big TV watcher either. So I mean, when I was a big TV watcher, there were 5 channels.
Yeah. When I was a big TV watcher, it ended pretty much at the end of the Viking season. It'll pick up again in September. So
I feel sorry for you then.
All right. Well, I don't know. It's an open discussion, and that's something, I'd love to hear some of your guys' stories. Why don't you, reply, whether you're listening to this and you got the blog open or you got Facebook open or whatever. Tell us some of your stories and your interactions, both positive and negative, or give us some of your ideas on what is the best way for a community to interact with the law enforcement of the community and vice versa, and how maybe we can start to turn things around a little bit and all kind of walk back some from being so outraged all the time, and maybe see a little bit of a turn, maybe not to Mayberry, but I don't think we'll ever have that here in the Twin Cities, but something that seems a lot more reasonable. So if you like what you hear here at our weekly podcast, if you want to give us a rating. That helps get the word out to other people. We're super appreciative. We're super appreciative you're here anyways. That you're giving your time to listen to us every week, and for those that share what we put out there, for those who respond and have that dialogue with us, we're super thankful. And so what can you do? You get a hold of us if you see anything weird in your community. We'll talk about it on the podcast. We'll blog about it. But let us know. I mean, let us be your megaphone. You be our eyes and ears. We'll be your megaphone. You want to get involved and help form and shape some of these policies and stuff. Get on an advisory commission, run for a local office. You can do any of the above by getting a hold of us at commsolutionsmn@gmail.com. That's commsolutionsmn@gmail.com. We're here for you. I mean, this is what we have decided to do with our lives is to help Minnesota turn the corner to a more rational and a more common sense approach to governing, especially at the local level. But we know that will trickle up over time. That if we build a strong foundation now, that we can have a strong future. So thank you guys again so much. We're gonna
notice we didn't say trickle down.
That's right.
Okay, I'm just thinking that.
Yes, I was thinking it as I said it.
Great minds think alike, Jay.
That's true. That is true, as evidenced by the direction we're going in every week. So, speaking of which, we're going to have another week in between a couple of these here. So, a week from now, we'll be back at you with something else entirely different. So, make sure you share it and tune in. We love you, Minnesota. Now it's your turn to get to work.
Let me